Welcome to all of you joining us for Poetry Night. We hope you'll enjoy our program and feel a part of our community of poetry lovers. Many of you have attended our face-to-face programs in the solarium, an intimate gathering with poetry, wine, and discussion. And we hope we can get back to it. But in the meantime, we share with you through video the poems that we have chosen or written. Some are funny, some are flippant, and some are quite serious, and some we don't even understand what they really mean until we read them several times over. They invite us to find their deeper meanings. So I'm asking Joan Mueller to start and tell us some of the history of this.
Hi, I'm Joan Mueller. Bill and I have lived here for more than 8 years. Westminster has many stories over the years, and it's the lore that goes with them. Anyway, several years ago, several of us were sitting around talking about poetry, and one of them was Lydia Blanchard, a dear friend and also a professor of English at San Marcos. We talked about how much we love poetry. So we began to have poetry meetings at night, parties. They turned to open mic poetry nights, and residents could bring poems to read. They were almost every month. And when people arrived, they could get a glass of wine, find a place to sit down and listen. We had a wide variety, as Monita said. One time we read the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock as a group. Another time, a lovely lady with a contralto alto voice sang Titwillow. And one man came in a full baseball outfit to recite his poem. So anyway, gathering in the solarium just about at sundown, when you could look out and see the view and then listen to poems or read poems, was really special. And other people helped us. There was always a group of people who helped set up, and the wine was delivered, and we would just spend an hour or so together. One time there were 30 people, and we all enjoyed those times. And now Monita is helping us continue. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy it.
Hello, I'm Dan Wilson, and I have a couple of poems tonight written by a longtime friend of mine, Elizabeth Schultz. I've known her for 80 years now, since we were both about 3 years old. Her mother and her grandparents were great friends of my mother and my grandparents for many years. Elizabeth most recently taught English at the University of Kansas. She was a Melville Scholar up there. And she has a book called Mrs. Noah Takes the Helm. So this is about Noah's wife, Mrs. Noah, steering the ark and controlling things. First poem is called Mrs. Noah Ponders the Elephants. We used them. They hauled the logs, they hoisted them into place, they built the ark. We abused them. We prodded them, we thrashed them, we chained them. Then we betrayed them. We chose only 2 to enter the ark. There we kept them in the dark, listening to the lamentations of the drowned. They knelt in the hold with the solidity of boulders. They yearned for flowers, they mourned for forests, they leaned against each other, weeping for friends and families. They trumpeted for life everlasting. They became our lost landscape. Their griefs were ours. They were our ballast. They were our keel. And the next poem, also by Elizabeth Schultz, is called Opossum. And Ms. Schultz was very much into protecting animals of all kinds and plant life. And this is called the opossum. Adjusting to suburban interstices, he lived successfully, scuttling among shrubs, along curbs, scouting out grubs, tubers, and the lady of his dreams. He sustained his dignity in a society prejudiced against his tale. At night, an opaque shadow, he was backlit by stars and headlights. He had been hustling gutters and, satiated, sauntered along asphalt when they aimed for him, reduced his ancient lineage to roadkill, contemporary anonymous. I pulled aside, stretched him out on earth's altar to suppurate into glory, his fur transformed to grass, his teeth to seeds, his tail to root. Bless his bones and guts.
Smolinsky, and I will read a short piece by Walt Whitman containing a lovely metaphor. A noiseless, patient spider, I marked where on a little promontory it stood isolated, marked how to explore the vacant, vast surrounding. It launched forth filament, filament, filament out of itself, ever unreeling them, ever tirelessly speeding them. And here comes the metaphor. And you, O my soul, where you stand, surrounded, detached, in measureless oceans of space, ceaselessly musing, venturing, throwing, seeking the spheres to connect them, till the bridge you will need be formed, till the ductile anchor hold, till the gossamer thread you fling catch somewhere, oh my soul.
Thank you. Very nice. And next we have Molly Bean, who's going to read Candlelight.
So Candlelight is by Tony Hoagland, a poet you've probably not heard of. I ran across him in The Sun magazine, which I've subscribed to for many years. He's described as that rare literary phenomenon, a critically acclaimed poet who wanted to be understood by a general audience. And the editors write in the introduction to this, Tony was a stimulating writer to work with and often receptive to our suggestions. He once commented that he must have been in denial about a dangling participle we flagged, but he would also stand his ground when it felt necessary, such as the time he sent us a poem that mentioned the death of Senator Joseph McCarthy, the notorious right-wing ideologue whose name is synonymous with the anti-communist witch hunts of the 1950s. Tony had written that McCarthy had died of mouth cancer, and after I pointed out that this wasn't true, he replied, Joseph McCarthy should have died of cancer of the mouth, and that's good enough for me. I like his poems because they're easy to understand, but he also uses language in a new and unusual way. And he ends most of his poems with some sort of an exclamation mark. Here it is, Candlelight. Crossing the porch in the hazy dusk to worship the moon rising like a yellow filling station sign on the black horizon, you feel the faint grit of ants beneath your shoes, but keep on walking because in this world you have to decide what you're willing to kill. Saving your marriage might mean dinner for two by candlelight on steak raised on pasture, chopped out of rainforest, whose absence might mean an atmospheric thinness 50 years from now above the vulnerable head of your bald grandson on vacation as the cells of his scalp, sauteed by solar radiation, break down like suspects under questioning. Still you slice the sirloin into pieces and feed each other on silver forks under the approving gaze of a waiter whose purchased attention and French name are a kind of candlelight themselves, while in the background, the fingertips of the pianist float over the tusks of the slaughtered elephant without a care, as if the elephant had granted its permission.
My favorite poet, mine, Alexandra Crane, or Lexa Crane, and from Alexandra, is E.E. Cummings. His lyricism and choice of words for other words amazes and challenges me. The last line of this poem is nonsense, but oh, so vibrant. This is my favorite love poem. Somewhere I have never traveled, gladly beyond any experience. Your eyes have their silence. In your most frail gesture are things which enclose me, or which I cannot touch because they are too near. Your slightest look easily will unclose me, though I have closed myself with fingers. You open always, petal by petal, myself, as spring, touching skillfully, mysteriously, opens her first rose. Or, if your wish be to close me, I and my life will shut very beautifully, suddenly, as when the heart of this flower imagines the snow carefully everywhere descending. Nothing which we are to perceive in this world equals the power of your intense fragility, whose texture compels me with the color of its countries, rendering death and forever with each breathing. I do not know what it is about you that closes and opens. Something in me understands. The voice of your eyes is deeper than all roses. Nobody, not even the rain, has such small hands.
This is a poem that I wrote about the crepe myrtle, which stands outside my window. It's a poem that describes the crepe myrtle, but on one level, it's just a description. On another level, it's this poem of loss, something with which we are all familiar. My crepe myrtle. I think of the crepe myrtle outside my window as mine, a solace, a refuge. I enjoy the mock wildness of the carnival pink spun sugar blooms atop the slender branches, wind strong, knocking against my window, requesting entry. Though many times this year it was I who sought permission to live in the cradle of the silken bark branches amid the boisterous blooms, to join the squirrels and sparrows, a tree home, a soothing fantasy. There is another view of my crepe myrtle abroad. The crepe myrtle is too tall, too close to the windows, should be trimmed, unsafe, perhaps. But I would miss the hurly-burly embrace of tossing branches and blooms, causing the morning light to dapple the wing chairs, the intimate view of feathers and fur, a rainbow of brown, black, and gray. I would miss the white-tailed mourning dove's black, lidless eyes meeting mine through the glass window, inquiring, So, who is in the zoo? Is it Native Americans who say we only borrow the land for a while, then leave it? I must remember, my crepe myrtle is only on loan.
Hi, my name is Jeff Walker, and I've been writing poems really all my life, but for a pretty long period I didn't really have time to write them when I was pursuing my career. So now that I'm retired, I'm taking up poetry again, and I wanted to try out some kind of schemes of types of poem for practice, and so this is what I managed to come up with. There's a note at the beginning of the poem that says, this reminds that a haiku is a poem of 17 syllables in 3 lines, 5, 7, 5. Then there's also a type of poem called the tanka. This is Japanese poetry, I should add. A tanka is 31 syllables in 5 lines, 5, 7, 5, 7, 7. So what I have here then is an example of a haiku, a couple of examples of tanka, and the last one is mixed. So, oh, and these are independent poems, so they can be read really in any order if you want. Cut down the dead elms and plant some red oak instead. Something to wait for. The storm surge crashes against the coastal village where once we sheltered. Just as then, it rains and rains and sweeps the shoreline away. On the Delhi Road, I see an entire family perched on a single motorbike. Father, mother, children, and a soundly sleeping baby. When I was quite young, I thought that mountains floated in the sky. I saw this. The mountain's snow-capped peak above the city's gray haze, and the foothills were obscured, and the mountains seemed to rest on nothing.
I am Joyce Wilson, and many years ago, when I married Dan Wilson, the first place we went was to Pine Woods, and that is in northern Michigan. It's a lake, and a cottage is on the lake, which his grandfather built 100 years ago. So the first poem I'm going to be reading is 5 a.m. in the Pine Woods. I'd seen their hoofprints in the deep needles and knew they ended the long night under the pines, walking like 2 mute and beautiful women toward the deeper woods. So I got up in the dark and went there. They came slowly down the hill and looked at me sitting under the blue trees shyly. They stepped closer and stared from under their thick lashes and even nibbled some damp tassels of weeds. This is not a poem about a dream, though it could be. This is a poem about the world that is ours, or could be. Finally, one of them, I swear it, would have come to my arms, but the other stamped the sharp hoof in the pine needles like the tap of sanity, and they went off together through the trees. When I woke, I was alone. I was thinking, so this is how you swim inward. So this is how you flow outward. So this is how you pray. And I want to say that this poem is by Mary Oliver. And this book I have here that I'm reading from mentions that she's winner of the 1984 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. This particular book, which is called House of Light.
Hello, I'm Ann Chris, and I belong to a little group locally called the Interfaith Community for Palestinian Rights. This is my poem that I wrote. Tears, to record what I saw, stand tall. Why war is bad, unutterably sad. Norwegian filmmakers show so the public knows of Gaza. Inhumane is the name of the game of war, particularly when children are hit by bits of metal. The only good about war is kindness soars, juxtaposed to the cruel. These opposites grew in tears of Gaza. The appeal of war are its extremes, valor and hate. The resilient and the dead make the bed where we lie. People of earth forget dearth, learn to share. And what is the gain? An intact world with very less pain.
I'm Joan Mueller, and I'm going to read a poem by W.S. Merwin. He's one of the most decorated poets in the United States and maybe in the world. Very prolific. Look him up. He lived till he was 91, and his poetry changed over time. In the LA Times in 2007, they wrote about him and said he was a post-Presbyterian Zen poet and channeler of ancient paradoxes. He garnered many awards, the Young Yale Poet in 1952, the Pulitzer more than once, the National Book Award, and the inaugural Tanning Prize. In his late years, he lived on Maui on a rundown pineapple plantation, which he and his third wife reclaimed. He introduced 500 species of palm varieties. He'd gone to Hawaii to study with Robert Aiken, a Zen master. He was a conservationist and lived in blissful solitude. He didn't answer his phone in his later years. It's recommended when you read the later poems that you read them slowly, but the one I read now is a late poem called Thanks, and it'll be a little faster. Thanks. Listen with the night falling, we are saying thank you. We are stopping on the bridge to bow from the railings. We are running out of the glass rooms with our mouths full of food to look at the sky and say thank you. We are standing by the water looking out in different directions, back from a series of hospitals, back from a mugging. After funerals, we are saying thank you. After the news of the dead, whether or not we knew them, we are saying thank you. In a culture up to its chin in shame, living in the stench it has chosen, we are saying thank you. Over telephones, we are saying thank you. In doorways, and in the backs of cars, and in elevators, remembering wars and the police at the back door, and the beatings on stairs, we are saying thank you. In the banks that use us, we are saying thank you. With the crooks in office, with the rich and fashionable, unchanged, we go on thank you. Thank you. With the animals dying around us, our lost feelings, we are saying thank you. With the forests falling faster than the minutes of our lives, we are saying thank you. With the words going like cells of a brain, with the cities growing over us like the earth, we are saying thank you faster and faster. With nobody listening, we are saying thank you. We are saying thank you and waving, dark though it is.
Okay. And I'm Manita Prince. And I'm going to read just a small poem that I wrote myself. My husband and I went to see the solar eclipse in 2017. The only thing is we didn't get to see it because the clouds moved in, but that's another story. But on our way back, we stopped at places of interest, and we went to a little town called Ponca City, Oklahoma. And we were surprised about how much there was to see. You will see in the bottom of your page in the poetry packet, it tells you that this statue was built in 1930. Will Rogers was there to pay tribute to the Oklahoma pioneers. And you can read that. That's very interesting, I think. Anyway, the name of the poem is A Statue. Her shoulders confidently back, her feet solidly proceeding, her eyes on an image far away, one hand enfolding her child's, the other cradling a Bible, often forgotten in the dusty history books, old and current, the pioneer woman. She never wanted to go, to leave her old village, but she went and created home, neighborhood, and survival. Also in Ponca City, the home of the famous Marlin, who at one time was governor of Oklahoma, was turned into a museum, and tremendous amount of the museum was of American Indians, and all sorts of tribes, different tribes. So I found a poem there that I thought was interesting. It's only 3 lines, and it's from the Blackfoot Indians. What is life? It's the flash of a firefly in the night. It's the breath of a buffalo in wintertime. It is the little shadow which runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset. So I thought that was worthwhile. This is the end of tonight's program. We're going to meet again November the 30th. And any of you who would like to participate, please write me. My number is 210, I live in apartment 210. Tell me that you want to submit something and we'll put it together. And I say good night, and until a month from now, we'll see you then. Thank you.